Hello! Today I'm going to take you through the combat mechanics as they exist within 316 Carnage Amongst the Stars. And there's a lovely cover image for you. So let's get out of the way. And behind you can see that I'm running a Roll20 page. Now I've used this for 2 different games, I think, but it's been a little while since I've done that on here. This is the map you use whenever you're doing combat, and as you can see, it's fairly abstract. It's basically just to do with ranges. So, I suppose I can start if I click on a corporal, for instance. So, let's say the corporal is armed with an E cannon. When he's at close range, he can't get any kills on the enemy. At near range, he can get 2d10s worth of kills, and at far range, he can't get any. So basically, that means that the corporal in this case would need to have his character at the near range here in order to inflict damage on the enemy. So each weapon has its different number of kills that it can do at different ranges. So let's just move him back for the moment. Over here, I've got the alien chits, and I've labelled it as 15 alien chits. Now, a game of 316 is made up of a series of mini-campaigns. So each mini-campaign is you landing on a planet and wiping out life on that planet, which takes place over a number of different combat encounters. It's not just limited to combat encounters, and that's one thing I've seen people miss out on. They become obsessed with the combat mechanics and forget the fact that you don't have to play the combat as the only thing to do. For instance, I've had races on board the mothership, if you like, for the 316. I've had the platoon rush. Their characters have been using their non-fighting abilities to try and rush to the best dropship, because no one wants to get stuck with old Maria, which goes down on one wing and a prayer. So, you know, there's lots of other non-combat scenarios you can put into your games. But this combat mechanic I'm going to show you here is the core main part of the rules. But again, it's not a limitation. So I've set up on the screen here, you can see I've got a sergeant, a corporal and a trooper over on the right. That represents 3 player characters. On the left here, I've got 15 alien chits. The referee gets the number of PCs times 5 chits, alien chits. Those chits represent the threat or the danger on this planet. So the referee has to make a decision when he comes into a combat encounter of how many alien chits is he going to use on this combat encounter. It's entirely possible if you want. You could put all, in this case, 15 into one combat, but that would be extremely deadly. But it would also be a great way to get the players to use up some of their strengths and weaknesses, which I went into a little bit in the previous video. But I'm just going to edit this for the moment, and 15. So let's just make it a 5 alien chits encounter. So I'm just going to use 5 chits, and our heroes are going to have to eliminate those 5 chits in order to defeat the aliens in this case. Now 316 is, it differs wildly from D&D. Combat, as you've seen, is fairly abstract. You roll for the number of kills you get. You don't roll to see whether you kill an enemy. You're going to kill enemies. That's just a given. It's a storytelling thing. So as your character moves from, I don't know, far to near, you narrate what happens. Even if you don't get any kills officially, you can still add a number of kills into the narration, but they don't count towards your kill count. That's just part of your kill count, sorry. That's just part of the fiction that you're generating. So in the scenario I'm going to set up now, there are 3 player characters, but the rest of the platoon is with them. And so anybody, the referee or the players, can narrate actions and things in the fiction that are done by the non-player characters. You've got free rein to do that because everything gets controlled ultimately by these core rules inside. But what happens outside those rules is just the fiction of the story that you build up. So I've come up with a little scenario just to sort of give you an idea of how this works. So 316 came across planet A, I'm just calling it A, They checked it out, they found no life, and so they moved on. However, what they did find when they were probing it was some alien ruins, ancient alien ruins. So people from Earth came on with a follow-up mission, just interested to see what they might find. So they started digging and started delving into the soil to unearth these remains. But like the dwarves, they delve too greedily and too deep. And they've woken up an alien menace that was deep in sleep beneath the ground. So 316 have turned around and they've come back to take this on. So they've had a distress call from a group of archaeologists, and that's given them coordinates where they can land. So our player characters and their whole platoon come in the dropship, crash to the ground nearby, and as they advance over it, rise, they can see the archaeologist camp in front of them. There's a few containers, large containers that have all their equipment. They can see some tents there, but they can't see any people. And they can see equipment littered all over the place. There's even like a little runabout car there. The players advance towards the camp. They're trying to find some evidence of the aliens that need to be eliminated. As they get into the edges of the camp, they can hear a banging bass drumming, as if thousands of boots are marching on a metal platform, but they can't see where it's coming from. And at that point, we switch over to the combat mechanics. The first thing you do when you get into a combat scenario is you work out who has dominance, and I've got the rules written up here. We're all going to make a NFA roll. That means all the PCs and the referee will roll for the aliens. If all the PCs are successful, they can all move to the range band that gives them the best number of kills. If the highest success is a PC, then the player can just set the range. If the highest success is the aliens, the GM sets the range. Now that's quite important. If all the PCs fail, the range is set at 5. If the aliens succeed and all the PCs fail, there is an ambush, and the aliens immediately get a kill on the PCs. That doesn't mean they kill a PC. That means damage is measured in number of kills, and PCs can be killed with a single kill. They do have mitigation for that, but we'll get into that in a second. So the aliens, let's clear this out of the way. So the aliens have a score of 5. They don't have separate fighting ability and non-fighting ability. They just have a single ability score, which is 5 in this case. The sergeant up here, he has an NFA of 7, which I've put in the green circle. The corporal has an NFA of 5, and the trooper has an NFA of 4. So everybody needs to roll dice. So let's roll for the aliens and see what the aliens get. Okay, they get a success because they've rolled less than or equal to their score, which was a 5. So the aliens have a success. We now need to do a similar roll for each of the troopers. So for the sergeant first, he needs to roll under 7, or 7 or under. He gets a success. We're going to roll for the corporal now, and the corporal needs a 5. The corporal fails, okay, and the trooper down here needs a 4 or less. 8. Okay, so that's a fail. So we've got 1 success. So let's now refer back to those rules. Dominance. All PCs successful? No. Highest success is a PC. The player can set their range. The highest success is the aliens. No. Okay, I've just had to refer to the rules because I haven't put it into my note here. But our aliens succeeded with our 4, and our highest success was the sergeant with a 4 as well. That means they're joined. So we basically come into either making an agreement between the referee and the players or a roll-off, and we'll just use a roll-off for now. So I'll roll again for the aliens. Highest one is going to set the range. Aliens get a 6. Roll for the players. Players get a 4. So aliens get to set the range. In this case, as the referee, I'm going to choose the position that gets me the best chance of inflicting damage on the characters, the player characters. So I'm going to set the range to close, which means we move, or we start the combat encounter by moving all the player characters over to close. Now, during a combat round, you can do various things. You can use your fighting ability to try and get kills on the enemy, or you can use your NFA ability to do something else. So let's have a look. What was the sergeant using? Did he have an E cannon? I think he had an E cannon, didn't he? Let's just check him. Oh no, the sergeant's got a slug rifle. So you can see at close range, he only does one damage, one kill. But he can get more kills if he moves to near. So he doesn't want to be at close range. He's going to want to move away to near range so that he can improve the number of kills he can get. So let's take a look at the corporal. He's using an E cannon. He has 0 kills at close, but he can get 2d10 at near. Okay, so again, he needs to move away from the aliens. And the trooper, he's got an E rifle, and again, his best distance is at medium range. Or at near range, I should say. So all 3 of these characters want to be at near range in order to get their best number of kills. They're not going to do very well at all at close range. Now, you can use your NFA ability. You roll for that during the combat round. If you succeed, you can change your range, but that means you don't get to do any combat. The sergeant, part of his mission is to get the maximum number of kills that he can during the combat. So he can use his NFA to put another player at a different range. You can move from close to near and near to far, but you can't jump 2 ranges. But of course, we've got 5 alien chits. This combat encounter will not end until all 5 alien chits are removed from the game. So we now move into a combat role. Okay, so the aliens have another ability as well, is they can use a roll rather than to attack to change the range of the enemy. This represents either a retreat or a charge, I suppose, and you need to build that into the fiction. So let's start rolling for the first combat round and see who's going to get successes and failures. Now, player characters need to make a declaration of what they're trying to do in general terms, like will it be a fighting ability or a non-fighting ability that they roll. So let's see what happens. What I'm going to try and do is have the sergeant, what I'd like him to do is use his NFA to move the corporal back a range, allowing the corporal to fire, and the trooper is going to use his NFA to try and get to the near range as well, and the aliens are just going to try and attack. So let's start rolling to see what happens. Let's get back to the chat here. So let's see if the sergeant is successful in trying to move the corporal away. So I'll roll a d10. The sergeant's NFA is 7. Okay, we get a 3. So he's successful. And at this point, the player character narrates what happens. So the sergeant, he's going to throw himself in front of the corporal and shout, "Get back, corporal! Get to the high ground!" And he's going to start and the sergeant's going to start laying down fire to try and keep the aliens at bay as they burst out from under the ground, showering everybody in rock and gravel, and they start running and charging towards them with their claws and their teeth exposed. So he's successful. So that is effectively going to move corporal to the near range. Okay, so the corporal now makes his roll. His NFA is 5. Will he be successful in trying to attack the aliens? A 1, a successful. His corporal is armed with a E cannon, which at this range does 2d10 damage. So let's just roll 2d10s. Let's change this to a 2. Look at that, 11. So the player character, or the player for corporal, writes down that he's got 11 kills. That's just a running total for his character. But as he's had a successful combat roll, that also means we have to edit this and reduce the number of chits. Now, the number of kills does not relate to the number of chits, but because he had a successful combat round, it reduces the threat in this combat encounter by 1, so that goes down to 4. So there are now only 4 chits left in this encounter. So the trooper here was also going to try and move to the middle near range. So his NFA is a paltry 4. Let's see whether he can get that or not. Okay, so he's failed. So at this point, he needs to narrate what went wrong. perhaps he was trying to run back and get to the same high ground that the corporal's on, but an alien jumped out on him, knocked him, bowled him over, and then turns on him ready to tear him apart. So he doesn't get to attack this round. He also doesn't get to move because he failed that. Now I'm going to roll for the aliens. If you remember, their ability is 5. So I need to roll 5 or less. And we get a 9. So the aliens fail. They don't get any kills on the player characters at all. So what we can do with this is that the referee can narrate what's happening with the aliens. So I'm saying they emerge, they're all, they're bipedal, they've got claws, they've got teeth, and they start maneuvering and spreading out and starting to surround the player characters. They're not actually rushing forwards, and those that do rush forward are the ones that get torn down by the corporal's E-cannon. Okay, so at that point, we've ended that first combat round. We now move to the second combat round. And again, the player characters have to make their declaration. So the sergeant in this case is now going to try and do the same to get the trooper to move back. The corporal is just going to try and land some kills, and the trooper himself will try to land some kills. Hopefully the sergeant will have moved him back before he does that. Players can choose what order they go in, by the way. It's not necessarily going from the highest rank to the lowest as I'm doing here, but it can be in any order. The aliens themselves are just going to swarm into the attack. So let's start rolling and see what happens. So the sergeant's NFA is 7. And scores a 4. That's a success. So he can move Trooper Hard Slap back to the near range. Now let's roll for Corporal here, who has an NFA of 5. He's trying to lay down more kills. He scores his success, so he's going to... Have I got a 2d10 in here somewhere? There we go. He rolls for his number of kills. He gets 6 more kills on the aliens. So, I mean, I've jumped over it, but the sergeant would be narrating the story. Perhaps he sees some aliens attacking. He's run across their charge and drawn them away from the trooper, allowing the trooper to get to higher ground. And then the cannon is firing from the top of the hill, and he lays waste to 6 aliens before they can get near them. Of course, everyone can interact while you're doing this. It's not just down to that one player, but that player has control or direction of what narration he puts into the story. And it doesn't just have to be the combat and the stuff here. The corporal could get to high ground. He could just make up some facts. He can just add into this because it is just building fiction. He can say, he puts his shoulder to one of the equipment tables and he tips it over, and the equipment crashes onto the floor and some chemical stuff explodes, creating a cloud of smoke, and that's what actually helps get him to the high ground. It puts the aliens off, scares them, they back away from him. So you can just invent things to include in the scene. It's not just down, you're not limited. Yeah, you're not limited by what the referee says. The players can add all these sort of things in there. Again, I haven't narrated anything about what the other troopers in this platoon are doing, but again, that can come into the fiction. So the corporal's laid down. He logs on his character sheet that he's got another 6 kills. So the trooper's been moved by the sergeant, so he can now roll his fighting ability of 6 to try and get some kills, which would be a 1d10 against his fighting ability of 6. He gets a 4. That's a success. How many kills does he get? So let's just check Trooper Hard Slab. He's got an energy rifle, so he gets a 1d10 at near range. So let's go back here. And he scores a 2. That gives him 2 kills to add onto his character sheet. So both the corporal and the trooper have got kills this turn. So again, we have to reduce the number of chits or threat tokens left in this combat by 2. It's 1 each, 1 for each player character. Okay, and the aliens need to roll 5 or less. Let's see what they get. 4. That is a success. So here's an interesting situation. The aliens have got a success. That means they're going to inflict kills on every player character who either failed their roll or rolled equal to or less than the aliens. In this case, Trooper Hardslab, he rolled a 4 and the aliens rolled a 4. That means Trooper Hardslab is going to suffer a kill. So let me bring this in up from off the side here. Here's a character sheet. Blank. You can basically take a kill and that leaves you a mess. So you would tick off this box here. So Trooper Hardslab is now been given a kill, which means he's a mess. And the fact that he's messed up should become a part of the fiction. So the narration here from the referee is going to be how the aliens got into close to him and mauled him or whatever, but effectively left him a mess. The player character does have the option to use his armour instead, which means he wouldn't be a mess, but his armour would be ruined. So effectively the armour gives you a free kill. So you can take a kill without being hurt. But that armour only lasts, or rather, let me say, that armour lasts for the entire mini-mission on the planet. Only once you get off planet can you replace your armour. So if he uses up that kill now, it's gone. If that armour would be gone, and he wouldn't be able to use it again on this planet. So as you can see here, he can take another kill, but that would leave his character crippled. Perhaps laying on the floor, bleeding out, still able to shoot and stuff, but not able to move because he's been crippled. Again, you can play with the fiction. He could be moved. Somebody could drag him within the fiction, or maybe he could drag himself on, with one working arm. He could pull himself along or something. But you need to feed that into the fiction. And likewise, if you choose to destroy the armour instead, you need to feed that into the fiction as well. And that's what builds up. That's what makes the game, is the fact that you're doing that fiction. So Corporal Hardslab has taken a kill. Can I use this box here and just record a number in there? There you go. He's taken a kill. As you can see, we've reduced the number of alien threats. So again, you can feed that into your fiction as well. As each player character is earning those... is getting kills on the enemy, you can add in that the enemy horde is thinning out or whatever. Now, aliens are not always animals. They could be skinnies from Starship Troopers. They could have guns. So you could build that into your fiction. Maybe some of them come up and they're able to spit acid. It depends on the type of alien that you've got, that you've rolled up for this planet, but you can do that. Let's go for one more round and then let's see what happens. Now, I can't remember if the sergeant can get any kills at close range, so let's just check what his listing is. He can get 1 kill. Well, that's all he really needs, but that's not what he's best at. His fighting ability is pretty low. Maybe he should move himself now. Yeah, okay. So, next round, we're going to try and move the sergeant out to near range. The corporal is going to fire and Trooper Hardslab is going to fire. So hopefully between them, they might actually finish this combat encounter. The aliens are again just going to try and get kills on the player characters. So let's start playing. The sergeant has an NFA of 7, so he's going to try and move himself. Let's get back to the die roller. And he scores an 8 to move. That is a failure. Okay, so it's not looking good for the sergeant. Okay, the corporal, he has a fighting ability of 5, so let's roll for the corporal. He gets a 3, which is a success. I'm just writing it down here because I keep forgetting what I've rolled. Okay, and let's try for Trooper Hardslab, who has a fighting ability of 6. And he scores a 4. Okay, so that's successful. So those 2 successes on shooting will take out the last 2 alien chits, but that doesn't mean we don't roll for the aliens. Their ability is 5, so I roll a d10 for the aliens. And the aliens get a 7, which is a failure. Okay, so let's roll for the corporal. He does 2d10, if I remember correctly. Click, click, click. I've gone too far. 2d10. Here we go. So the corporal is going to make a note that he gets another 13 kills. And the trooper does a d10, I believe, with his energy rifle. he'll make a note that he gets 4 kills. And again, the players would be narrating what happens here. You know, do they make the aliens explode? Have they shot up a tree and the tree's fallen down and it's burning in front and keeping the aliens at bay? You know, all this kind of stuff. And the sergeant too. He gets to narrate the fact he tried to move to a different range, but the aliens were close on his tail, so he effectively wasn't able to get the distance he needed to bring his weapon to bear. He's being chased down, and perhaps the corporal or the trooper firing are the ones who clear those aliens off his tail, and therefore he survives. So those 2 successful attacks from these player characters here would remove the last 2 alien chits and thereby end the combat encounter. Now, I hope I haven't done too much wrong. Any rules experts will no doubt put me correct in the comments. There's a link to 316, the PDF that you can buy from Drive-Thru RPG, in the description below. If you like what you're seeing, then please go buy it. Use my link if you can.